All right, guys. Welcome, WHAP students, to your Unit 6 review. Obviously, this unit is mostly about the effects of the Industrial Revolution as we see it with imperialism, especially in Africa and Asia, but also really you see some American imperialism in the Western Hemisphere as well. So keep that in mind. So just a couple of topics we're really going to focus with for the test here. We'll start off with the Industrial Revolution since it's sort of the catalyst of all this. It creates a major growth in cities as agriculture becomes more efficient. The jobs are going to shrink up in the agricultural sector. They're going to grow in the cities, and so people are going to flock to the cities because that's where the jobs are. We know that's going to lead to massive urbanizations, which gives a host of problems early on in the Industrial Revolution aftermath. It also changes migration patterns, and by that we're really talking about uh, rural areas, country to city, and then of course you'll have immigration patterns as well as people from non-industrialized countries migrate to industrialized countries for more economic opportunities. You also see the abolition of slavery throughout much of the world in this time period, and that's also going to have a massive effect on migration patterns. You're going to see the Chinese, Indians from India that are come in and fill the gap left by African labor that existed before. You'll see the Irish as well migrate to England and to America, especially, and they'll also fill labor shortages. Now, with all the imperialism that's going on, there's going to be a justification for sort of the bad things that are going on, and that's social Darwinism. And social Darwinism is based off of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, which occurs, in the early to mid 1800s. And these imperialists, they look at it and say, yeah, that's the justification. There's physical differences between white people and people of color. And since at this time period, Europeans had finally made it to the top, they see it as that means that Europeans are better and that they're fit to lead the new world and other peoples should serve them. They also see the differences between the genders and women knowing their place. That's all social Darwinism. That men are inherently better than women. So this gives them justification for all the imperialism that is going on. Now, there's quite a few colonies in this time period. When we talk about Australia, that is a British penal colony. It is a colony based off of that's where Britain had to drop off all their debtors, all their prisoners. Eventually, once they find out that Australia actually has some worth, then they're going to, they're going to establish it as a settler colony. There's a lot of settler colonies going on in this time period, and then eventually, of course, gold will be discovered, and that gold's going to lead to a lot of migration to Australia, especially of relatively nearby China. And this influx of Chinese people into Australia is going to lead to some backlash from the white British people that are there. There will be uh, Chinese settlements that are attacked, and then they'll actually get an exclusion act to exclude the Chinese from being able to come to their country. They see the British see their rights as not just the Chinese, but taking over the Aboriginal people that had lived there for tens of thousands of years. The British saw it as they were bringing a better world to these savages, and so they felt justified with everything that they did. China in this time period, this isn't the powerful China of old. China has experienced the loss of economic independence. They are essentially being forced to trade with more powerful countries, in this case, the Europeans and America. And so they don't really have the luxury of trading with whom they want and what they trade. A big example of this, of course, is the Opium Wars. There's multiple Opium Wars, and opium is a very terrible drug that's outlawed in Britain. You're not allowed to have opium in Britain, yet they're selling it to the Chinese, hooking the Chinese, and of course, the Chinese can't get enough of this drug. And when the Chinese government says, "Hey, you're doing these terrible things to our people," the British don't care, and they actually go to war with the Chinese twice, and through force of arms will force the Chinese to allow them to trade opium to their people, which really breaks down their society. There's also a lot of e-migration in this time period from China because it is underdeveloped at the time period. And so the Chinese are feeling a lot of labor shortages around the world. And, gold rush in America, gold rush in Australia, the Chinese are going there to hopefully get a better life for themselves because times are fairly tough in China. Africa, of course, a big theme is the scramble for Africa. But really, before 1870, Europe's presence in Africa was fairly limited. It was mostly coastal enclaves, just these ports here and there that protected trade, and they would have a few settlements in select areas along the coast, but really not much until 1870. But after that time period, industrialization is going to speed up. Imperialism and nationalism, these are all factors that are going to lead to basically carving up of Africa. And, for the most part, the Europeans are going to use both warfare and diplomacy. They'll use diplomacy where they can. And when they don't get what they want through diplomacy, well, then they're going to use warfare to take what they want until essentially all of Africa outside of Liberia, the American colony, and Ethiopia are under the influence of Europe. Those are the only two colonies are the only two African places that will be able to stave off colonization by Europeans. Of course, this leads to intense competition. We're actually in 1885, we're going to have the Berlin Conference to calm things down, which sets sort of these guidelines and whatnot for how Europe is going to act so that they don't go to war with each other. Of course, this in the end doesn't really succeed. We're going to get World War I eventually, regardless. All right, Japan also has a presence in this time period, but it is not as a colony. Japan is a big dog in this time period thanks to the Meiji restorations, which is modernization. It's westernization of Japan, getting rid of the samurai and modernizing. It is a time period where the government will sponsor industry to make sure that it thrives. Japan wants to be one of the haves and not a have-not. Japan's going to begin building an empire. They have to. Japan simply doesn't have the raw resources to be a great industrial power on their own. So they're going to look to China and other areas to begin building an empire. So they will also pick on China along with Europeans. We got India. India is colonized by Britain. It's the jewel in the crown. And Britain's they are going through the white man's burden. They're going to justify their actions in Britain, in India. The British are making these people better, even though we know that India's had this glorious history. You got a couple of big events like the Sepoy Mutiny, where through religious means, you need to go to the cafeteria to take a PSAT.
Yeah, I got here at like 8:05, and I tried to go to the middle school gym, and it took me like 15 minutes to get in.
Okay.
And they said I was too late to test.
Okay. All right. And so, there's a lot of action going on in India, but India is too valuable with its cotton and its pearls and all the things that it has. So Britain's not going to let go of India until after World War II. Okay, so really that's the big point. Your test is 25 questions. There's no reason you shouldn't be successful on this. If you listen to this video, write down some of the things that I'm saying, go over the things that I'm saying. If you only do it once, well, you're only increasing your chances on the test by a little bit. But if you go through this multiple times, each time you go through it and really process it and synthesize the information, then you're going to be a lot more successful when it comes to the exam. Okay, so keep the big themes in mind that we have industrialization spearheads imperialism. Imperialism basically creates a world of haves and have-nots, and the justification is social Darwinism. Since we took you over, we're better than you, and so we're entitled to treat you however we want. We know that migration is also a huge theme of this period. There are internal migrations from the country to the cities, and there are immigration patterns of cheap labor coming from underdeveloped areas to developed areas to fill factory jobs or build railroads and things of that nature. Okay, good luck on your test, guys. I think you're going to do well, and I guess I'll see you soon.